The story begins with a man speaking in an urgent tone. It's time to put a full stop to the delayed work. We must resolve the conflict once and for all, shouldn't we? The person next to him also chimes in. Oh, saintly one, now it's time for you to decide. For the eternal peace of the empire. The subordinates of the various factions lament and complain. The eyes of the three men representing them speak volumes. The prince of the Allies Empire, Master Swordsman Kyle Illicit Allies, with a fierce gaze, says, choose me, or the bishop, with a beautiful appearance as if stepped out of a painting, possessing golden hair and eyes, Juz, his gentle but chilling voice, I've prepared a dark dungeon specifically for you, my goddess. The head of the Joyce trading delegation, Calix Joyce, with deep blue eyes, an indifferent and cold gaze. Our protagonist is here, she whispered to herself. I have no idea what Calix is thinking. Her expression is so impassive, and the blue aura of the gods before us is full of messages. The art god Monty is preaching about the value of art. The appearance of Juz, the god of destruction, Sela, asserts, only those as strong as Kyle can win love. The knowledge god Hez sends information about the expensive items owned by the Joyce trading delegation. The love god Odyssey enthusiastically dances with fans. She helplessly wonders, how did I end up in this situation? She hears the urging voices of the priests in her ears. There's no more time to hesitate in making a choice. She struggles and wearily says, well, a maid came by earlier and asked how the saintly one is feeling today. The protagonist then calls out, softly. She tries to sift through her memories, realizing her name might be Annie, a character even unnamed in the original story. Annie continues, because 2 days ago, the saintly one suddenly asked about your name, and you were always in a panic, so I worried a lot. The protagonist awkwardly replies, no, I'm fine now, reassuring herself, I have to act as natural as possible. Annie, seeing her seemingly okay, says, okay, then I'll prepare some food for you first. If you feel unwell, I'll call the priest now. What if we miss sending birthday wishes to the prince? The priest is also preparing the dress as you wish. That dress is quite valuable. Well, the protagonist thinks to herself, if I were Ariel in the original, I would probably jump with joy for not being able to wish the prince a happy birthday, right? She imagines Ariel would exclaim in disbelief, unbelievable. I must wish the prince a happy birthday. Ariel, now calm, tells Annie, no, I'm really fine. You brought the food here first. Remember to take out the awful salad. Annie laughs and says, what awful salad? You don't eat salad anyway, so hearing you say that is strange. Yeah, I know. Once the saintly one finishes speaking, the maid closes the door and leaves. Ariel sighs in relief. She reflects on her current situation, seeming complicated, so I became a young-looking person about 17 years old, with eyes of the A-type sapphire stone, right? The saintly one, Camilla. Her mind returns to the work she read in a past life, about Saint Camilla, a noble woman who received confessions from 3 different aristocrats. It was a good novel. She chuckles to herself, thinking about the ending and muttering softly, and all 3 men became Camilla's husbands. It's a bit shocking, haha. Suddenly, her smile fades into a dark expression, and 2 days ago, I transmigrated into the body of the protagonist in this novel. She's named Ariel. Ariel, the illegitimate daughter of a steward, and her mother is the 4th daughter of some southern duke in a poor province. They've been living precariously until today. While regularly going to the temple despite her low status, the girl aims to meet a nobleman from a big family and change her life, and she accidentally caught the eye of Bishop Juz and was brought to the Temple of Ilium 2 years ago. According to a deal with him, Ariel has been playing the role of a fake saint, meaning she's been used for political stability by Bishop Juz and Prince Kyle. The saint for now, Ariel, though knowing that once the real saint appears, she'll be discarded, still believes that the bishop will protect her. And with her unrequited love for Prince Kyle, she unknowingly becomes a foolish villainess, hating Camilla. The moment she swung a knife towards Camilla, the girl who forgave her, the swords of the 3 men pointed towards her. There's no time for remorse, she dies instantly. Upon reaching this point, Ariel's lips tighten slightly as she thought, as a reader, I find Ariel's death quite fitting, but I don't want to die. Before transmigrating into this novel, I still vividly remember the moment of my own slow death. My previous body had died, so I had no body to return to. She silently looked at her current body. It means I have to live my whole life in Ariel's body, as the illegitimate child of a wealthy family, always wary of people's judgment since childhood. It was very difficult for her to save money, and as soon as she became a saint, she left that house. Yet, within just 1 year, her life was gone. Ariel slowly turned back, walked slowly towards the window, and gently opened it, letting in a cool breeze, the dazzling sunlight of the early morning shining into the room. Ariel squinted, running her fingers through her hair, feeling the fresh air tickle her nose, a privilege only those alive could feel. The chilling moment of death from her fingertips to her heart made her realize, no matter what, it's better than dying. Ariel's hair fluttered gently as she straightened up and murmured softly, thinking back, is the life of a fake saint better than my previous life? But this isn't bad either. As long as I don't live like in the original, I can change the future. Ariel, full of hope, thought, that's right, not bad. Because I transmigrated before she became wicked, I don't care about being the saint or who the men will belong to. There's plenty of time, so I'll learn to live in this world first, then when the real saint, Camilla, comes, I'll return her position and leave the temple. Then I'll own a house and start a peaceful life for the rest of my days. Yes, now, even if I deny reality, it's just a waste of time. She spoke firmly, Ariel. Yes, from now on, I am Ariel. Suddenly, a bell rang above, and Ariel involuntarily looked up in confusion, A green screen appeared with the words, accept your new fate. A bright future awaits you. Ariel looked at it curiously, what's this? Each phrase appeared on the green screen. The ancient gods are bored, interested in your outstanding adaptability. Ariel read and wondered, the ancient gods are bored, interested in my outstanding adaptability? And no matter how much she reread it, she couldn't understand anything. What is this after all? The green board gradually disappeared. Ariel stared blankly, it disappeared? Or was it just a dream? Suddenly, there was a knock on the door, knock, knock. She looked towards the slowly opening door. Just stepped in, calling Ariel. She whispered to herself, I'm not Ariel, so. He continued, I brought food. Juz held up a tray of food for Ariel, and she softly called his name. Oh, Juz. Juz, the head of the temple, smiled gently and said, today you called me by name? Ariel was startled. Oh, she remembered. Only the real saint, Camilla, dared to call him by name, while Ariel addressed him as Bishop. She awkwardly replied, oh, I'm so absent-minded. I'm sorry, Bishop. Juz said, but it sounds nice. Ariel exclaimed in confusion, He chuckled again. Juz gently said, actually, I forgot that I have a name too. I hope that in the future, you'll call me by my name like this. Ariel pondered, if I were the Ariel in the original, I would probably have brightened up by now, but staying within limits might be better. Ariel, feeling embarrassed, said, the words just now were just a slip of the tongue. How could I dare to address your excellency directly? To prevent herself from dying again, she silently reminded herself, I am the imposter Saint Ariel, don't forget. She calmly said, I'm truly sorry, your excellency. She maintained a gentle demeanor. Juz remained silent for a while before finally saying, I've said it before, and now this place belongs to Ariel. Ariel thought to herself, Juz is a bright and gentle man, just as described in the novel. But Juz told her that as long as it's what Ariel wants, she can take anything or do anything, as long as she understands that freedom comes with responsibility. That's the predetermined fate of the true Saint Camilla. Ariel pondered, even when Camilla becomes the saint in the original story, the only person she always addresses by name is the head bishop of the temple, who holds unparalleled influence, equivalent to that of a royal emperor. And the one who turned Ariel into a fake saint. That man is named Juz. Of course, your excellency, Ariel replied. Juz suddenly smiled and said, sometimes I want to hear Ariel call my name too. It's a pity. In her heart, Ariel suddenly became frightened. Even though his face is smiling, I can still feel the pressure. Ariel bowed respectfully and said, thank you for bringing me food. She continued to think, because he's the only one in this temple who knows I'm an imposter, making him suspicious isn't a good thing. But it seemed like his steps were hesitating, but I wonder if it's because we haven't seen each other for a few days. But today you look a bit different than usual, Ariel. Ariel was at the temple, writing incessantly. After finishing, she stretched comfortably and said, it seems like I've made quite a progress. Even during the conversation with the bishop last time, I seemed to cope quite well. Ariel remembered Juz's cold face. Now Ariel sat pondering those thoughts, confirming the following in the past few days. According to the holy calendar, it's now the year 722. According to the national calendar, it's year 82. A year before Camilla actually appeared. Where I live is a religious state with both saintly and royal authority. The Ali's Empire. 99% of the population believes in divine beings. But because it's not a monotheistic regime, each temple has its own name and title, appearing everywhere in the empire. Those gods are the gods of justice Hathus, the god of knowledge Haze, the god of love Odzi, the god of art Merze, the god of destruction Chloe, the god of compassion Omen, the god of death Kaizok, the god of deception Beatrix, and the god of eternity J, a total of 9 gods. And where I live, the Ilium Temple, is the only place where all 9 gods are worshipped. Therefore, the Ilium Temple is the most special among all temples. And the saint born here, who harmonizes with the 9 gods, is the one who leads all religions in the empire. There are records related to the investiture here, right? Only the saint can receive the investiture, and occasionally the investiture containing knowledge will be sent down personally by one of the 9 gods. She read in the book, Maintain the Saint. And occasionally, one of the 9 gods in any book describes the process of receiving the investiture like that. A triangular blue light resembling a curtain appeared before her eyes, the magical languages sparkling as if engraved into her soul. Although faint and then disappearing, the magical language still lingered as if etched into her heart. Humans cannot hear the language of the gods, so why this kind of transmission? Although the original story mentions scenes of Camilla using power or calling it divine power, there seems to be no mention of the investiture. Ariel shook her head. Oh, I don't know. What does it have to do with me? Now I have to read some useful books on practical matters. They say the temple library has as many books as the royal library, so while I still can, I must read as much as possible. It's almost deserted there, and the saint is free to use it, which is convenient because I also want to avoid being here. Ariel happily continued writing. She drew a line under the sentence. This place states a monthly maintenance fee, which is essentially like a salary. Adding up all these, in 1 year, calculated in Korean won, I would receive about 220 million won, right? Essential items will be provided by the temple, so if I diligently save up, even in retirement, I can enjoy a fairly comfortable life. If I sell artifacts given by nobles or personal holy relics, it could also amount to a considerable sum. She remembered, before I was transported here, Ariel was just a poor girl with no money, living paycheck to paycheck. But I'm different. After saving enough, I'll leave the temple and buy a well-located building somewhere. Suddenly, there was a bell sound, ting, which startled her. What's the sound? Ariel opened her eyes, looking at the blue notification board with the message, The ancient gods are bored and curious about your paper. She wondered, again? The ancient gods were bored initially, and now they're interested in my paper. She thought to herself, it's happening again. Am I really transported into a novel? Why are game elements appearing like this? I can't even touch them. Ariel waved her hand towards the notification board, wondering, is there a glitch in my transportation to this world? While contemplating, there was a knock on the door. Knock, knock. Ariel said, come in. The maid, Annie, entered with a tray of tea and some snacks, saying, Saint, I brought some snacks for you. Ariel glanced at the tray, thinking, perfect timing. She pointed to the floating dialogue box and asked Annie, do you see this? Annie remained silent, saying nothing. Because from Ariel's perspective, there was nothing there. Annie sighed and told Ariel, Saint, you must quickly recover. Seeing Annie's attitude, Ariel thought, it's probably as I suspected, only I can see it. Annie placed the tray and teapot on the table and continued, Madame's body is very weak, so it will be very difficult for her to complete her main tasks. Ariel found Annie's way of speaking somewhat strange. After thinking carefully, she realized, for the past 3 days, I've only eaten, slept, and read books. Camilla is the true saint, so she visits the temples in this area and meets with priests, or frequently visits the emperor and the crown prince. I'm not the true saint, so I can't do those things. I used the excuse of a weak body to explain why I only stay around the temple. Because how could an imposter like me do the tasks of a true saint? Annie abruptly interrupted Ariel's thoughts, stammering, but the last time, as the saint, I told you my younger brother was injured. But I've just discovered that he's also in debt. Perhaps he needs my help. Ariel was taken aback by Annie's sudden disclosure. Ariel wondered, why is she telling me this? Annie continued, I'm sorry, but could the monthly allowance you give me be increased a little? Annie chuckled nervously. She grinned, waiting for Ariel's response. Meanwhile, Ariel was stunned, thinking, oh, I understand that smile. I've seen it before. It's the smile of those seeking benefits from me. That sly look is so similar to the people I met in my previous life. Ariel, as a character in the novel, was portrayed as a simple-minded antagonist, someone who acted on emotions. So, for someone like Annie, who was always stuck in the role of a maid, Ariel was undoubtedly an easy target. But I'm not that Ariel. Ariel reminded herself silently before asking Annie. The maid cheerfully replied, yes, Saint. Ariel asked, have I ever given you money before? Annie hesitated at Ariel's question, her speech faltering. Yes, you have. You were concerned about my younger brother, so you helped me. But why are you asking suddenly? Ariel tapped her finger on the armrest of the chair, saying, how much have I given you? Annie replied, 650 francs per month, ma'am. I don't demand much. Just an additional 50 would suffice. Ariel pondered, the maximum wage for a maid is usually 2 francs. But she receives 650. Now I know why Ariel is broke. Ariel chuckled sarcastically, saying to Annie, am I just a doormat to you? Annie hesitated at Ariel's remark, asking, excuse me? Ariel continued sternly, a doormat that a servant tramples upon? Disappointing. You seem to be in a bad mood today. Think before you speak. But listen to me carefully. Ariel asserted firmly, from now on, I won't give you any more money, not even a penny. Annie was startled by Ariel's statement, while the saint looked straight into Annie's eyes and continued, as a servant working for the saint, you've already received your full wages, haven't you? So why do you still demand money from me? Annie was about to explain but was cut off by Ariel. But if you're so concerned about your brother, bring him here. I heard the stable needs more hands. I'll consider it and bring your brother here. Annie suddenly exclaimed, Saint. Annie was visibly angry, biting her lip. Ariel thought to herself, the person she always thought inferior to her turns out to be above her. She must be in shock right now. I know that look very well. It makes me sick. That's the disrespectful attitude and disdainful gaze. Annie was furious, trembling with rage. She clenched her fists tightly and said, Saint, it seems you've forgotten. I know your secret. You're an imposter. Annie said angrily. Ariel was stunned by Annie's words. She thought, right, maybe Ariel in the story did give her money because she seemed pitiful. But it wasn't out of kindness, only because she was so scared of the maid's threats. Annie, seething with anger, tried to calm herself down and continued with a sly smile, if I were to reveal that you're just an imposter. Before Annie could finish, Ariel coldly interjected, go ahead. Speak. Annie paused, asking, what? Ariel thought that until now, Ariel in the story probably intended to give Annie money to keep her quiet. Initially, it might have been 300 or 400 francs, continuously increasing over time. But everything had changed now. Ariel smirked challengingly, go tell them I'm an imposter. Annie's throat tightened with fear as she exclaimed, if I were to say that you. Once again, Ariel cut her off, saying, Annie, if I were discovered as an imposter, I might be sentenced to death. But Ariel stood up, glaring at Annie, and said, a maid receiving 650 francs a month, while also helping me conceal the truth. What will happen then? Annie was rendered speechless by Ariel's threatening words. Ariel continued calmly, I'm half noble. So, even if I die, it will be a glorious death. But what about a servant? I don't think so. Annie screamed, Saint. Ariel stepped closer to her and remarked, you probably won't be envious of me when you're lying under the guillotine, will you? Annie trembled at Ariel's words, her cowardly demeanor evident. Ariel persisted, if you already know I'm an imposter, then quickly tell the truth. We're in the same boat now, understand? Are you willing to risk your life? Annie was terrified by Ariel's words, sweat pouring down as she began to consider the risk to her life. No, Annie almost whispered, frozen in place by Ariel's words. She trembled, unable to say anything more. Ariel continued, steel in her voice, does your family know? Annie hastily replied, only I know. Only I know that you're a fake saint. Truly. My family doesn't know anything. Ariel nodded, smirking, maybe I should personally visit your family and inquire, shouldn't I? Annie began to plead, Saint, please, just this once, if you forgive me. Just then, Jiz entered the room, causing Annie to panic and stammer, Bishop, it's not like that. Without allowing Annie to speak further, Giz drew his sword and swiftly struck Annie, blood gushing out. Giz acted with cold detachment, showing no emotion. Ariel was startled by Giz's sudden, decisive action. Giz calmly sheathed his sword, as if nothing had happened, and said to Ariel, "In grave situations, one must act promptly." Ariel trembled, clutching her hands tightly. She thought, yes, Giz's decision was the right one. Annie was a spoiled child for using forbidden knowledge to threaten me. There's no guarantee my true identity won't be exposed. However, in this situation, Ariel hesitated. In Ariel's eyes were images of bloodstains. Seeing Ariel like this, just said, "I'll clean up this mess, Saint." Ariel remained frightened and speechless. Giz silently turned to leave. Just before exiting the room, Giz advised Ariel, "Rest for now." Ariel stood motionless, watching Giz leave. It took her a while to regain her composure, and she sighed deeply, thinking, right? It was the right decision. The issue is... She looked at the pool of blood on the floor, her heart pounding heavily. Ariel was filled with worry and thought, like Annie, killed without a question asked, and one day, it could be me. Suddenly, she was jolted back to reality as a new dialogue box appeared, reading, "The gods favor your intelligence," followed by another message, "The gods favor your judgment. The gods favor your composure. You are closer to unlocking the Thunderbolt prophecy." Outside, Giz walked heavily, recalling the recent conversation between Ariel and Annie. The fate of a maid who helped conceal the truth, while receiving 650 francs a month, what will happen? You probably won't be envious of me when you're lying under the guillotine, will you? Ariel's cold, provocative demeanor echoed in Giz's mind. He silently wondered, has she always been so cunning and decisive? He remembered the maids whispering and avoiding Ariel before. He turned the doorknob, stepping inside and questioned himself, then answered, no. He dropped his sword to the floor, thinking, if she had been this clever from the start, how could she endure until now? He was at the Temple of Ilium, where Giz believed in 9 gods, different from the saint who worshipped all the gods. The priests in the temple worshipped different gods. Giz gazed up at the ceiling, among them, the god Monty, the god of art, whom Giz revered. A maid entered Ariel's room, addressing her, Saint, She was the new maid replacing Annie. I'm sorry, she bowed deeply, expressing regret. I sincerely apologize. I promise not to make this mistake again. The maid continued to bow, apologizing. Ariel waved her hand, smiling, it's okay, I'm fine. Nothing serious. The maid still worriedly said, but... Ariel reassured her, it's okay, you can go now. The maid backed away, saying, I apologize, Saint. Please call me whenever you need. Ariel smiled, She smiled to herself, thinking, making a fuss over accidentally bringing me salad. Overreacting because of such trivial matters exhausts me. The maid has been replaced, so I'm a bit confused. Ariel recalled asking the new maid upon her arrival, are you Isabella? The maid replied, I'm Monica, Saint. Ariel sat pondering the recent bloodshed. She comforted herself, this isn't the world it used to be. Human life values have changed. But just a day, and I remained calm in the face of someone else's death. I feel angry at my adaptability. Now I understand why Giz behaved like that. I'm an imposter saint, a secret that could plunge the empire into chaos. Both the temple and the emperor would suffer heavy losses. However, recalling Giz's cold, ruthless face, his words echoed in my mind. In grave situations, one must act promptly. Ariel felt despondent and advised herself, it's better to leave earlier. Waiting for the real saint will only hasten my death. Ariel pulled out a chair and sat down, feeling melancholic. She thought, dying will make no difference to my life. And what's this game dialogue? You are closer to unlocking the Thunderbolt prophecy. It's bothering me. Ariel started jotting down notes, considering selling all the sacred artifacts to buy a medium-sized mansion. In the original story, Ariel was an unimportant character. As long as I disguise myself cleverly, Giz will quickly forget about me. She put down the pen, feeling a bit excited. Good. Just 3 more years. Ariel thought to herself, Annie is no longer alive, so I don't need to give her the 650 francs monthly salary anymore. Now I just need to save up. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Knock. Knock. Ariel curiously asked, who's there? She approached the door, wondering if it was Giz. Indeed, it was him. Ariel looked surprised as Giz entered. She bowed respectfully and said, May the bishop be protected by the 9 gods. Although in her mind, Ariel couldn't help but wonder why the bishop suddenly barged into the saint's room like this. It was quite uncomfortable. Juz bowed his head and smiled, responding, "Thank you, Ariel." He also thought to himself, it seems she's even learning the saint's formal greetings now. Juz stepped closer, looking at the books on the table and asked, "What are you studying?" Ariel hesitated and said, about that. Panic-stricken, Ariel thought, "I just remembered the bill. Oh no! If he sees it, my escape plan will be exposed." If that's the case, Ariel quickly devised a solution. She hastily pulled out a paper and handed it to Juz, saying, "You've come at the perfect time. Could you help me look over this?" Juz, curious, asked, "What is this?" Ariel smiled and asked, "How does tomorrow's birthday celebration for Prince Kai look to you?" In her mind, she thought, of course, this was written by Ariel before. "I don't know the content, but it unexpectedly came in handy." Juz took the paper Ariel offered and began to read it intently. He remained silent for a while. Juz slightly tightened his grip on the paper and said, "Birthday wishes for Prince Kai. Happy birthday?" He continued reading, "Congratulations on the birthday of His Royal Highness Kyle." Ariel's forced smile gradually faded. As he kept reading, Ariel froze like a statue of ancient love gods. Her face began to blush, feeling embarrassed. However, inside, she screamed in frustration at her mistake. "Ariel, I know you're simple-minded, but to this extent? Why did you have to?" Juz kept reading despite Ariel's pleading gaze. Even writing it would have been better. "I will quickly." Juz paused for a moment before continuing, "Beloved?" He looked at Ariel with cold eyes, his voice chillingly calm as he asked, "Do you love Prince Kai?" Ariel stammered, not knowing how to explain, That's... She hesitated before saying, "It's not necessarily that kind of love." Ariel thought to herself, as an imposter saint, I shouldn't be foolishly falling in love with someone else. It looks pathetic. Ariel touched her chin, pretending to be calm, and began to speak gently, like the divine beings who love their people. "I used it with the intention of blessings." Upon hearing Ariel's explanation, Juz remained cold as he asked, "But what if Prince Kai misunderstands its meaning? What would you do then?" Ariel felt bewildered. What is he thinking? Why so serious all of a sudden? I have to put myself in Ariel's shoes to understand the hidden meaning in their words, but the chances of Prince Kai seriously considering it are almost non-existent. Juz pondered. If it were Ariel before, she would probably create chaos like, "I won't change my mind." "Oh!" he thought, then looked directly at Ariel standing before him. He thought again, but what does she know? She can't predict everything in front of others. Ariel laughed awkwardly and said, "If it causes a misunderstanding, it's best to correct it, right?" Juz smiled and said, "I guess I must have misunderstood." He handed the paper back to Ariel, smiling warmly, "I've noticed you've matured a lot lately." Ariel reached out to take the paper, smiling back, "Thank you." Ariel thought, I'm being praised for growing up again, but with this? Suddenly, she was surprised as Juz let go of the paper, letting it fall. Ariel was about to bend down to pick it up when she heard Juz say, "Don't worry about it." Ariel hesitated, standing still as she saw Juz bending down to pick up the silly paper. He gently lifted it up while still kneeling, looking up at Ariel with a soft smile as he handed her the paper. Ariel, taken aback by the noble bishop kneeling before her, stuttered, Thank you." Ariel held the paper, still feeling puzzled, thinking, why can't I look into his eyes? Juz smiled gently like the sun, saying, "I'll see you tomorrow morning." In the Holy Temple library, the sound of footsteps echoed, and Ariel walked away, followed by two maidens. Ariel, feeling confused, thought, let's put aside that embarrassing incident for now. I have to deal with the royal event tomorrow. Besides, As she pondered, Ariel suddenly heard a faint voice, "Sir, please stop." The noise caught her attention. Ariel looked towards the panicked voice, her face filled with suspicion, thinking, what's happening over there? In front of her was the sight of a man blocking the path and harassing a novice nun. The frightened nun pleaded softly, "Sir, please don't do this. I'm a devotee who serves the divine spirits." The vile-looking man sneered, replying, "Just because you're a devotee doesn't mean you can't enjoy a meal. Besides, you're not even an official nun, just an apprentice." Upon hearing this, the novice nun firmly replied, "Whether an apprentice or an official, my devotion to the divine spirits remains the same." The man then suggested, "How about we have a drink together?" I want to show you a more exciting and lively world outside this temple. Don't refuse me. Continuing his offensive speech, he made the frightened nun cry out, "Sir." Devotee. Ariel sighed deeply, and the novice nun, raising her voice, warned the shameless man before her, "If you continue to harass me like this, I will formally report you to the temple." A voice interrupted the scene, "Step aside. If you want to meet women, go outside the temple. She is a novice nun." Ariel spoke coldly. The novice nun, relieved, called out to Ariel, who looked like a savior. Ariel called her back and said loudly, "Didn't you hear me? Step aside." Her voice was sharp, filled with anger, as she confronted the man. But he, unafraid, retorted, "I'm just having a friendly chat with this novice. Who are you to interfere?" "But it seems she's not interested, right?" Ariel asked coldly. The novice nun, truly frightened now, exclaimed, "Sir, this devotee is teasing me." The man, startled, denied, "Teasing? Oh, it seems the Temple of Ilium has been recruiting novices randomly lately." He vehemently denied, "We were just chatting and she's lying." He shook his head, acting as if he were unjustly accused, pushing me around like this in front of ordinary people. That novice truly heard him speak and felt confused. Unbelievable, he's so shameless. She retorted angrily, "Weren't you just inviting me out for a drink?" Suddenly, Ariel interrupted the nun, saying, "Please excuse me, sir. What noble family do you belong to?" Ariel asked the man, "I am Hans of the Zephi noble family," the man proudly replied, crossing his arms. "Zephi, perhaps not a prominent family in the imperial political circles." "I've never heard that name before," Ariel thought to herself. "The nun already knows my name, so you might as well reveal yours," he insisted. "A name?" he said. "After the humiliation I've suffered today, you, and the name of this novice nun, I will report to the temple." Hans threatened Ariel with arrogance. "Impertinent. Do you know who this is?" Upon hearing Hans speak, the two maidens following Ariel angrily exclaimed. Ariel raised her hand to signal the maids to silence, then calmly said to the novice nun, "Because you are called an apprentice nun, I will ask you a question." The novice nun, truly puzzled, asked softly, "What is it?" Hans, displeased and angry, loudly interjected when he saw Ariel ignoring his words. "Why don't you answer Ariel's question?" Ariel cut off Hans and said to the novice nun, "Tell me who has the authority to expel devotees from the Temple of Ilium." Ariel's cold and calm voice startled Hans. The novice nun truly listened and replied, "Yes, ma'am. The authorities are the head priest, the bishop, and the saint." "That's right. The saint has the authority to expel anyone from the Temple of Ilium, just like being disinherited from a noble lineage," the novice nun continued. "Are you trying to threaten me with strange words? What's next? Are you planning to summon the saint here and have me expelled?" Despite feeling somewhat uneasy, Hans remained defiant. "I don't need to do that, Mr. Hans," Ariel said, stepping towards the novice nun and Hans. "Because," Ariel grabbed Hans's chin and pulled him closer with a cold smile, "I am the saint." Hans was shocked and astonished. Ariel released her grip from his lips. Hans rubbed his lips, feeling sore with each touch, stuttering, "Why you are." "I will officially file a complaint with your family about this," Ariel said coldly. Hans, terrified and panicked, quickly interrupted, Wait. Ariel was handing the maidens a handkerchief after wiping her own hands. "I'm sorry." Hans kneeled down in a hurry and said, "I didn't know it was you, the saint. Even in my dreams, I couldn't have imagined." "I didn't recognize the saint." "I've committed a grave mistake," Hans pleaded, begging, "Please forgive me." The Saint Ariel looked coldly at Hans. "There's something you must do before receiving my forgiveness," Ariel said coldly. Hans, afraid, asked what it was. Ariel pointed towards the novice nun and said, "Apologize to the person you harmed over there." Hans turned his head in surprise to look at the novice nun, stumbling over his words, But I wasn't teasing earlier." I see." Ariel pretended to understand. "You mean my ears and the 9 deities were mistaken, right?" Ariel asked Hans coldly, leaving him speechless with fear. He turned to face the novice nun, bowing his head in acknowledgement of his mistake. "I apologize." The novice nun, tears streaming down her face, felt both relieved and moved to have her purity restored. It seemed that the situation had been temporarily resolved. Ariel instructed a maid, "Fetch the royal banquet ritual book and the anthology of royal banquet speeches from behind that man, please." The system's voice suddenly echoed, "Notification. Ancient deities are intrigued by your righteousness." Ariel was still astonished by the system's announcement when another message followed. System announcement. Ancient deities are curious about Ariel's recent actions, making her the first to receive divine revelation. The divine revelation system has been unlocked, and you may now receive revelations. Ariel couldn't believe her eyes. Divine revelation? What does that even mean? She wondered, feeling confused. Then, the system announced 3 deities, Odyssey, Hez, and Monty, are interested in Ariel's recent actions, and they can access divine revelation. Ariel was left bewildered by this sudden turn of events. Reading through the documents, Ariel contemplated, "So, the gods have chosen me? But why? Is it because of my extraordinary existence that they're suddenly interested?" She felt puzzled and frustrated, unable to understand the situation fully. Ariel tried to make sense of it all, thinking, maybe it's not because of my extraordinary existence that they're suddenly drawn to me. Perhaps they're just bored and looking for entertainment. Despite her attempts to rationalize the situation, Ariel couldn't shake off her confusion. The constant stream of system notifications added to Ariel's frustration. "Can't this thing be turned off?" she muttered irritably. The system displayed a message asking if Ariel wanted to disable the divine revelation skill, listing 3 deities involved: the threatening, the compassionate, and the whirling dancer. Feeling overwhelmed, Ariel responded with resignation, "Fine, leave it on." The system's announcement continued, "The deities are pleased with Ariel's response." Ariel couldn't help but feel annoyed. Is this going to keep happening? She wondered. Despite her frustration, Ariel couldn't deny the thrill of receiving divine attention. As Ariel contemplated the situation, she suddenly heard another notification from the system. Hez, the deity of knowledge, is using empathy with Ariel. This revelation left Ariel astonished. "My mind is becoming more clear," she exclaimed inwardly, focusing her attention on the books. The information from the text flowed effortlessly into her mind, as if she were absorbing hundreds of volumes in an instant. Feeling empowered by this newfound knowledge, Ariel confidently thought, "Now I can write any speech effortlessly, despite the sudden divine revelation." Perhaps this unexpected skill is a blessing in disguise. Despite her initial confusion and frustration, Ariel couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement and anticipation for what the future held with her newfound abilities. "Good morning." The next day, Ariel exclaimed as she stretched, feeling refreshed. "I had a great sleep after a relaxing bath. Yesterday, I read so many books, so I needed this rest." Ariel smiled to herself, thinking, and Hez's blessing extends for another 3 hours, doesn't it? She pondered, having high cognitive abilities and learning capacity is great, but unfortunately, it'll revert to the initial state after a certain time. There was a knock at the door. "Come in," Ariel said. As the door opened, Hez entered and asked in a gentle tone, "Did you sleep well last night, Ariel?" Ariel noticed the system's notification that the deity of art, Monty, can't take his eyes off Hez. She bowed respectfully and replied, "Yes, thank you, Bishop. May the 9 deities protect you." "It seems like you've learned a lot since I left yesterday," he remarked, noticing the stack of books on the table. Ariel smiled and replied, "That's because of the congratulatory speeches from the saints' documents. Regardless, if you want to survive as a fake saint, you need to maintain at least a minimal level of understanding. Even your relationships with the main figures need to be kept in good standing," Ariel thought to herself. Seeing Hez's silent demeanor, Ariel suddenly realized her slip and felt flustered, thinking, what was I about to do? Would it be different from the original Ariel? If so, oh no, I've been too careless. Ariel quickly tried to cover up her mistake by saying, "Although I don't know how many years it will take to find the real saint, I'll try to behave appropriately to avoid causing trouble." Hez remained silent for a moment before gently reminding her, "As I've said before, this place is now your home, so don't speak like that." Ariel felt uneasy. "Is he onto me?" she wondered anxiously. "Like Annie, you know the secret of the fake saint," Hez said, smiling gently as if he were an angel, before adding, "Let me review the new speech you wrote." Ariel felt nervous as he examined the speech. After a moment, he said, "It's not just good, it's excellent. You seem to have matured a lot. If someone else wrote this, I'd still believe it." Ariel felt relieved but still nervous. "Thankfully, I've been copying from the books," she thought. Modestly, Ariel replied, "I only made a few changes to the sentences I found in the books." Hez responded, "That's fine. In any case, it's much better than the last love letter." Suddenly, Jez remembered something. It seems there was a small disturbance at the library not long ago. Ariel was taken aback, realizing he knew about that incident too. Trying to maintain her composure, she explained, "Yes, I went to the library to borrow some books for my speechwriting and witnessed Lord Hans of the Zifi family teasing a novice nun. Perhaps I was a bit too forward in cautioning him as the saint. I expelled him." Jez's voice rang out coldly. "Zifi and all the followers of the Zifi family, if there's any more disrespectful behavior like that in the future, just tell me, and I'll take appropriate action." Ariel was shocked by his words, feeling fearful and thinking, expel them all? Both Annie and Hans, he handles them without hesitation. Suddenly, a window appeared showing, the deity of knowledge, Hez, is analyzing Jez. Hez criticizes Jez's emphasis on appearance. The deity of art, Monty, argues that the inner turmoil may have been overlooked due to Jez's graceful exterior. Seeing the heated debate in the window, Ariel pondered, "Oh my, what's happening all of a sudden?" Another window popped up, stating, "The deity of knowledge, Hez, criticizes Monty's focus on external appearance." Seeing Jez's troubled expression, Ariel felt concerned and asked, "Are you feeling dizzy?" Jez's serious face prompted Ariel to ponder anxiously, "What is going on?" The next moment, those windows disappeared. Ariel regained her composure and said, "No, it's just that I suddenly thought your judgment skills are truly remarkable. It's not easy to eliminate the corrupt elements, and relationships will inevitably become entangled, surely involving interests as well." Jez was surprised by her words. He said, "The priests think I'm a dictator, but it seems the opinion of the saint is different." Ariel smiled brightly and said, "I believe you, Bishop, are a fair and just person." "I've always thought so." Ariel silently reminded herself, "That's a diplomatic answer, as I've read in the original text that creating a fake saint is different from a prince with political ambitions. Jez is the stabilizing force for the people who are confused by the vacant saint position. Though no different from the angel of death to the wicked Ariel, he becomes a solid support for Saint Camilla. As long as I'm not the wicked Ariel, perhaps I'll also have some thoughts about him." As Ariel affirmed this, Jez still showed no expression on his face. He turned coldly and left, saying, "Perhaps I've taken up too much of your time. I'll leave now. Enjoy your meal." Ariel looked perplexed as the door closed quickly. She sighed and thought, "Did I say something wrong?" His reaction was too cold. "Well, at least I've passed through this ordeal safely." Ariel looked up helplessly at the window still displaying information. "I've said it, can't we have a bit more unified conversation?" she murmured. On Jez's side, he was silently suspicious. What has changed? He furrowed his brows, pondering, why did I only notice her eye color as blue today? Ariel's sincere smile when she said she believed I was fair and just. Can Ariel, a girl, smile like that? Juz doubted, thinking, I brought her here because she seemed innocent and suitable for this fake saint game, but no matter how people change. Suddenly, an angry voice erupted, "Bishop, what is this all about? I've heard from the saint herself, and how can you expel my followers without discussing it with me?" A furious man stormed in and yelled at Jez. He was the chief priest of the Ilium Holy Temple, Heinet. Even if she's a saint, I was shocked to hear she personally mentioned expulsion. "And you, Bishop, how could you do that? Expel an entire family?" Jez remained silent, looking calmly at Heinet, who was raging in front of him without saying anything. Heinet gritted his teeth and shouted, "The priests and I absolutely cannot accept this. It seems you've made a big mistake." Jez calmly spoke up, "The reason I decided to expel them is because they were engaging in dirty dealings with a corrupt faction of high-ranking priests in the Ilium Holy Temple." Upon hearing this, Heinet immediately fell silent. "Somebody told me, eliminating corrupt elements is difficult, but excellent." Jez calmly folded his fingers and looked at the man before saying, "So, I'm considering whether to choose more to remove." "What's the opinion of the chief priest?" Heinz stammered fearfully, I just came to express my hope that you would discuss with me." Jez coldly interrupted him before he could finish, flipping through the documents on the table and saying, "I heard there's been a dark energy flow passing through the Anza's Mineral Mountain range recently. And there have been abnormal sightings of gold-collecting monsters. When people have free time, they often have strange thoughts, so I'll give you, the chief priest, the opportunity to go to Mount Anza's." Heinz, visibly pale with fear, hastily stuttered, "Sir, Bishop. If I go there, I don't know when I'll be able to return to Ilium." My position as chief priest is not one that can be left vacant, and furthermore, I'm old and weak. Jiz looked directly at him and said coldly, the chief priest will go personally. After saying this, Jiz smiled kindly and gently said, I order you to investigate. In Ariel's chamber, a novice nun was kneeling before her. Ariel, puzzled, turned to her maid and asked, what's going on? The maid beside her reported that the novice nun wanted to speak with the saint urgently, repeatedly pleading to meet her. Oh, so she's the novice nun I met before? Ariel realized and asked gently, what is it that you want to tell me? The novice nun hesitantly began, I really. Then, with all her might and determination, she said firmly, I want to serve the saint. Ariel coldly refused, saying, I'm sorry, but only female attendants are enough for me. Ariel chuckled inwardly. Even attendant Annie knew her place, let alone a novice with potentially dangerous powers. So, Jiz assigned only female attendants. The novice nun quickly burst into tears and said, even so, I still want to serve the saint. Ariel was taken aback by the fervor of her plea. Reluctantly, Ariel waved her hand for the novice nun to leave the room. The maid quickly escorted her out and closed the door behind her. Then, Ariel explained to the novice nun, not long ago, an attendant named Annie died in front of me. She had been my attendant for many years. Do you know why? The novice nun looked up at Ariel in astonishment as the saint continued in a cold tone, because she was talkative. Hearing this, the novice nun turned pale with fear. Ariel continued, even experienced attendants can die, so how long do you think the life of a novice like you will last? Ariel thought to herself, with this level of intimidation, she'll probably give up. The novice nun took a deep breath, then stood up and shouted resolutely, even so, I still want to serve alongside the saint. Her shout was so loud that it startled Ariel to her core. The sincere novice continued, although I am an adopted orphan and fortunate to be in this position, I am still the same as I was then. In the face of ridicule from the nobles, I couldn't utter a word. On the contrary, I had to beg the one who slapped me in the face. But that day was the first time in my life that I received an apology from the nobles. The saint at that time was a bright path for me, an ideal that I always aspired to. Then she smiled brightly at Ariel and said, anyway, as a nun, I will live to serve the divine all my life. If I have to sacrifice for someone, I hope it will be the saint. Ariel looked at the charming girl in surprise. The novice nun continued softly, though I fear death if I displease the saint while serving, I will try not to die. Ariel began to soften her heart, thinking to herself, perhaps she resembles me too much in the past, someone who, no matter what, had to survive. My emotions are indescribable. Ariel gently asked one final question. Once you become my attendant, even if your life and your family's survival are endangered, will this request still remain unchanged? The novice nun looked up at the saint in astonishment, then realized she had been accepted and immediately smiled happily, insisting, it won't change. So, Ariel's new attendant was recruited in this manner. Now it was time for Ariel to depart for the palace. A knight came forward to pay his respects to her. He bowed and said, it is my first time meeting the saint. I am the captain of the February cavalry ran. Ariel smiled warmly in response, thank you for your assistance. As she traveled toward the palace, Ariel sat in the carriage admiring the scenery outside through the window. She silently exclaimed, so the cathedral is much larger than I thought. It takes quite a while just to reach the gate. Later, when I leave the cathedral, I must have a horse. There's a stable near the main cathedral, so I can learn to ride there, right? Suddenly, she was surprised by the scene outside the window, where people on the street were celebrating her arrival. Ariel thought to herself, so this is it. Now I feel the true sense of being revered and warmly welcomed, the representative of the divine. Ariel sighed and murmured to herself, but is the window system actually a divine presence? Why do I feel so doubtful? Immediately, a window popped up, showing the message, the god of knowledge, HEZ, senses discomfort in your expression. Ariel remained silent before them, her heart pounding. She chuckled softly, winking at the window and saying, I am still the saint, aren't I? Do you have any evidence that you are real gods? The window stopped showing the message in response to her words, but suddenly a bolt of lightning struck in front of Ariel. She stared out the window in horror, wondering how they could conjure such a natural phenomenon. Ariel, sweating with fear, reluctantly admitted that they were gods. But the window did not show any more messages. Ariel silently wondered, why so quiet? Are they angry? Unable to contain her smile, she chuckled, and the window immediately responded. The god of love, Odyssey, is curious about the meaning behind that smile. Ariel happily looked toward the window and thought, luckily, they didn't interfere with my thoughts. By the time it was dark, Ariel's carriage finally arrived at the palace. She sighed in relief. Finally arrived at the palace. Oh, the gaze of everyone is so intense. In my past life, I endured it to the point of boredom. Ariel reassured herself, straightening her back with a determined gaze. I will go in with my head held high, confident and determined. The entire hall fell silent as they bowed their heads to greet her. Now, only the gentle melodies from the orchestra could be heard. Ariel proceeded step by step toward the two figures seated on high thrones in the main hall. She realized, so those two are the emperor and empress of this land. The man was Emperor Luhansen Elise, and the woman seated beside him was Queen Dusenna Elise. Ariel looked up at them, thinking to herself, the queen was originally the daughter of the Duke of Michigan Ariel. She was married to the royal family 3 years ago. And the man holding the long sword standing beside the emperor is Prince Kyle Illicit Elise. He's looking at me with disdain. Even though I anticipated our relationship wouldn't be good, he openly dislikes me. Suddenly, Ariel began speaking in ancient language. Kyle's eyebrows furrowed, his gaze turning icy, as he listened to Ariel's words. His hands clenched as if in prayer. When the gods created the world and divided their powers into 9 parts, the power of compassion enveloped the empire, helping it prosper and welcoming the saint chosen by the god of justice. The prince was born under the blessings of the god of destruction, Zella. He is wiser than others, aiding the country, not underestimating politics and divine authority. May that grace and blessing bring radiant glory to the empire. We, as the companions and attendants of Ilium, also as your servant, extend our heartfelt birthday wishes to your highness, the sole heir of the empire. Ariel opened her hands, lifting them toward Kyle, saying, May the blessings of Sela and the 8 other gods always surround your highness. Ariel felt a sharp gaze directed toward her, causing her to glance around, wondering why Kyle's eyes burned so fiercely. The look of intense hatred on Kyle's darkened face made Ariel wonder, Hey, Prince, am I worse off than you? Ariel gently took Kyle's left hand in hers, then leaned down to place a light kiss on it, amidst the enthusiastic applause from the crowd. Ariel couldn't help but feel embarrassed in front of so many people. Kyle withdrew his hand, and Ariel opened her eyes slightly, feeling satisfied that she had completed her task. Why did Ariel want to do all these things? She asked herself curiously. Kyle had not uttered a word until he suddenly said, You. Then, there was a sudden flash of light accompanied by a loud explosion in the grand hall, causing chaos as people ran in panic and screamed. Ah! Suddenly, a lightning bolt struck near Ariel, and she instinctively shielded her eyes from the dust and debris, wondering, What's happening? Kyle rushed forward to shield Ariel. Witnessing the scene before her, Ariel murmured in astonishment, not understanding what was happening. The emperor shouted loudly, What's going on? The empress, stunned, exclaimed, Heavens! The guards suddenly seemed to realize something and stammered in shock, Lightning. Lightning has struck the statue of the first emperor. How could there suddenly be lightning? From above, amidst the chaotic shouts, Ariel and Kyle were stunned. The statue was completely destroyed. The guards panicked, shouting, but the lightning ceased. Queen Elise covered her head with her hands, exhausted, saying, Why does something like this happen? On the vaulted ceiling of the palace, there was a large hole with debris still falling. The guards began to shout, Check if anyone is injured, assess the situation. Ariel fell silent, pondering, Is it that even the sky hasn't figured out the cause yet? Turning, she whispered, Hez, is it you? At that moment, a blue screen appeared. The god of art, Mond, is uncomfortable with your kiss. The god of knowledge, Hez, denies ordering only simulated lightning, not the real thing. After reading the message, Ariel muttered, Huh? I'm still guessing. Another message appeared, saying, The god of knowledge, Hez, feels wronged. This infuriated Ariel, who couldn't help but shout inwardly, Wronged about what? The god of knowledge, Hez, is sulking. The god of art, Mond, looks at Hez with disdain. The screen displayed. Ariel, feeling helpless, placed her hand on her forehead and sighed, I can't take this anymore. She glanced at the commotion around her, where people were discussing the bad omen. That's a bad omen. The emperor's statue is completely shattered, implying that once the prince ascends to the throne, the empire will collapse. Hearing such words, Kyle's expression remained unchanged, but Ariel felt a pang of sadness, wondering, what's this? This feeling. Why does my chest suddenly ache? What's happening? The queen's question brought Ariel back to reality. The queen expressed regret, saying, "It's rare for a saint to visit. Thank you for your blessings." However, her gaze turned cold as she glared at Ariel, saying, "But I wonder why the gods are angry." Ariel, noticing the queen's expression, froze. She suddenly remembered something. Now she realized that the relationship between these two wasn't good at all. And indeed, the relationship between the prince and his stepmother wasn't pleasant. If only it could be better. Ariel thought, if this continues, it's very dangerous. Because this happened after I congratulated him, if Kyle harbors resentment against me, it will be a big problem. Feeling worried, Ariel stood up with her hands on her knees. "Although it's impolite and shameful, please pray for our empire when you return to the temple," she said. The emperor's suggestion brought Ariel back to reality. She struggled to speak, saying, "Your Highness, the divine spirit seems pleased." Ariel clasped her hands and said, surrounded by a radiant glow. After hearing this, Kyle raised an eyebrow in suspicion, asking, "Pleased?" Meanwhile, the emperor was also curious. "The saint says so, Your Highness," Ariel replied politely. "The divine spirit seems pleased with the offering." The emperor's face still showed some doubt. At this moment, the commotion below began again, with voices exclaiming, "Indeed. It means we've seen divine power, right? And no one was injured." Ariel's smile turned slightly subdued as she said, "The god Cello welcomes the spirit of Your Highness. It seems he's been a bit too enthusiastic." With a satisfied expression and a sunny smile, Ariel concluded, "Congratulations, Your Highness." However, Kyle didn't seem pleased. He just stared at Ariel with a calculating gaze. After the blessing ceremony, Ariel, feeling exhausted, walked out of the palace. She muttered to herself, "This situation feels like a bolt from the blue." In her mind, she contemplated, "Maybe I should tell the gods not to strike lightning anymore." Closing her eyes, Ariel rubbed her forehead gently, thinking, "I also need to investigate the relationship between the queen and the prince." Hez's explanation resolved smoothly, but I need to return quickly. Lost in her vague thoughts, Ariel suddenly heard Kyle's voice from behind, "Saint." Startled, Ariel turned around to see Prince Kyle approaching. His voice resonated evenly in the air. "The banquet is just beginning. You don't intend to leave me like this, do you?" Kyle's face showed anger, as if he wanted to intimidate her. Ariel froze, inwardly lamenting, "Why does he have to be like this again?" Cautiously, Ariel asked, "Is there something you need from me?" Kyle coldly replied, "Today is a bit unusual." Ariel's face fell as she asked, "What do you mean by unusual? The god's message or the explanation about the lightning being a blessing?" He retorted, suggesting that since the ceremony was over, there was no need for further discussion. Why has his demeanor changed so much that it might be misunderstood? Ariel wondered aloud, clarifying to herself, "Because I've been too casual until now, so from now on, I've decided to change." Kyle's eyes filled with suspicion as he reminded her, with such determination, "You shouldn't forget to clarify what happened today." Surprised?" Ariel asked, to which Kyle responded, "Surprised? Because you wrote a letter." Ariel exclaimed inwardly, "Ariel, what have you done?" She awkwardly asked, "A marriage proposal letter?" Kyle, looking serious, said, "I know you're bold, but I didn't expect you to send such a letter." Feeling embarrassed, Ariel tried to explain, "It was a mistake. Because of the wine, I might have been a bit tipsy and wrote nonsense before sending it to Your Highness. I'm truly sorry. Anyway, I helped Your Highness just now, so I hope you'll overlook that mistake." Kyle continued to interrogate, "A mistake? Isn't the content too specific?" To the point of psychological shock. He approached Ariel, gently lifting her chin and softly asking, "What did you think of me that night? How would you like to share love with me? And if I accept the proposal, how happy would you be? Did you write all this in detail? Do you not remember?" As the questioning intensified and their bodies drew closer, Ariel couldn't help but blush. She cursed inwardly, "Damn you, Ariel." At that moment, they were almost on the verge of kissing when Ariel panicked. What kind of romantic novel did she write in the marriage proposal letter? If I had known earlier, when the statue was struck by lightning, I would have just returned to the temple then. She tried to laugh it off, saying, "Oh, that's just." But Kyle emphasized, 8 pages long, telling that story. Her mind becoming foggy, she said, I actually poured a whole barrel of wine down my throat. I really don't remember anything. I'm sorry. She couldn't understand what Ariel was thinking. Kyle smirked. Many people become more honest after drinking. It's a primitive need. She shook her head earnestly. That's insane. So please pretend nothing happened. I hope you see today's blessing from Sela as part of my apology. I'm truly sorry for disturbing your highness, including the letter. He affirmed, so there won't be any more ambiguities. From now on, I'll focus on my role. Oh, is he waiting for me now? She asked. He widened his eyes in surprise. Huh? Suddenly, Kyle grabbed her hand tightly and exclaimed, I've been receiving that letter for several nights, unable to sleep at all, and you say it's because you were drunk and don't remember anything? Do you? A dazzling light suddenly illuminated the scene, accompanied by a loud noise. What was happening? Ariel felt a momentary fear, but seizing the opportunity, she quickly withdrew her hand and ran off without looking back. Kyle couldn't react in time. Ariel rushed to the horse carriage, shouting, Depart immediately. He exclaimed, Saint. She bolted straight into a room and locked the door tightly, her heart pounding as if it wanted to leap out of her chest. Ariel was shocked by his words, feeling fearful and thinking, expel them all? Both Annie and Hans, he handles them without hesitation. Suddenly, a window appeared showing, the deity of knowledge, Hez, is analyzing Jez. Hez criticizes Jez's emphasis on appearance. The deity of art, Monty, argues that the inner turmoil may have been overlooked due to Jez's graceful exterior. Seeing the heated debate in the window, Ariel pondered, Oh my, what's happening all of a sudden? Another window popped up, stating, the deity of knowledge, Hez, criticizes Monty's focus on external appearance.